Hello and welcome to Conversations. I'm Robin Torres, your host, and our guest today is Mr. Alvin Brooks. Alvin Brooks is the former mayor pro tem and the 6th District at-large city councilman. He was first elected to the council in 1999, and re-elected in 2003. Brooks was appointed as mayor pro tem by the mayor, Kay Barnes. He has conducted hundreds of seminars and workshops on the subjects of cultural and racial diversity, religious tolerance, and civil rights. He is the founder of the Ad Hoc Group Against Crime, and in 1991, he was elected as president. In 1989, Brooks received national recognition from President George W. Bush, named one of America's 100 Points of Light. Welcome, Mr. Brooks. Thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you so very much.
Well, you've done so much in our community, but we want to get to the beginning of Mr. Alvin Brooks' life. So I know you're not from Kansas City, but tell us where you are from.
Well, I was born May 3rd, 1932. Do the math.
Okay.
In North Little Rock, Arkansas, Pulaski County, and I'm the son of teenage parents. Wilbur Marharian, age 17, and Thomasine Gilda, age 14. My parents were never married. I did not know that I was adopted until I was 22 years old. My mother lived with my adopted parents when she was pregnant and went back to Miami, Florida, to Memphis, Tennessee to finish school. And then when my adopted parents realized that she was getting ready to graduate and now an older teenager, decided to leave North Little Rock, Arkansas, and came to Kansas City. And so some strange things have happened all during that period of time. At an early age, I'd say less than a year, I was actually dying of malnutrition. And so my adopted mother, and please understand that I use adopted mother and birth mother to just let our viewing audience and
right,
that they're two different sets of parents, because I had two mothers and two fathers.
Okay.
And that's the way I live, and that's what happened. But I was taken to St. Louis to the Homer G. Phillips Health Center. It turned out to be later on the Homer G. Phillips Hospital, which was the African American hospital in the city of St. Louis. And they diagnosed me and said they didn't know what I had, but that I would not live beyond age 6, and that because I was I couldn't keep any food down for a long period of time, and just enough to sustain life. My adopted mother took me back to North Little Rock, Arkansas, and one day I'm told that there was an herb doctor that came by, and I know that your viewers, unless they're in my age of the 70s, 80s, don't know what an herb doctor is. You probably read about it, heard about it, but don't know about it. Came by that Sunday for dinner, and my mother and my dad were telling him what the doctors in St. Louis had said, and told him what my symptoms were. And so he suggested that they buy a goat. So my dad drove about 200 miles and bought a white Saiyan goat. That's a breed of a goat with pink eyes and pink nose and all that. She had just come fresh and gave 4 quarts of milk a day.
Okay.
And when my folks left Arkansas, my dad built a pen, and we brought that goat by way of a car and to Kansas City. And I was on goat's milk until my junior year of high school.
Goat's milk.
And on goat's milk. And so don't ever say anything disparaging about, say, kids, because make sure that you let it be known that you're talking about children.
Right.
Because baby goats are called kids, and that offends me if you ever say anything about kids.
Oh, okay.
Because goats mean so much to me.
Right.
And so here I am, almost 80 years old. And
so the doctors had it quite
goats.
wrong.
That's right. And so I'm very fond of goats.
Okay.
I get a chance every time. In fact, I've been threatening to buy a small goat, and my wife has cautioned me against that because we do live in the city.
Right.
And it's against the law. And I said the neighbors wouldn't say anything, but she said I would. So I didn't know about it. But from that time, I went to I was in the Kansas City public schools. Period of strong segregation, discrimination, racism. It was very much a part of the landscape in Kansas City, as it was across America. And graduated in 1950 And I went to RT Coles and played in the orchestra and the band, and then took a course at Lincoln. So I actually graduated from RT Coles, but Lincoln claims me because I attended there also.
Okay.
2 years I went to a business college that was run by for veterans, but I was not a veteran at the time. And the year I was supposed to graduate, which would have been the December of 1951, the school closed down, people were indicted, and there's no record that I ever attended Lincoln Business College. Now that was no relationship to Lincoln High School.
Okay.
And so that fall of 1952, I enrolled in Lincoln Junior College, which is on the third floor of Lincoln High School, because remember, this is pre-Brown versus Board of Education.
Okay.
And so we could not go to the white junior college at 39th and McGee. And so, and as I reflect back upon that period, I'm glad I didn't, because I would not have had the kind of teachers that I had who really were there to teach rather than for a paycheck. And we wanted to make sure that we not only did we know who we were, because every day was African American History Day,
right?
And we studied the great culture. We studied those who were great men and women, heroes and sheroes of the period. And from there, I joined the police department in 1954.
And what year was that? 1954.
1954.
Tell us about that class. We have
that
a
was
picture
a very
of
interesting
it.
class.
We have a picture of you
It was
here.
a very interesting
Yes.
class. You probably cannot pick me out of the class of 29. I was the only African American in the class of 29.
Okay.
But it was a very interesting class. And at that time, it was very discrimination, as I say, in the city as well as on the police department. Only certain areas that you could patrol. Certain.
Let me ask you this: certain areas that you could patrol.
Yes.
Did that mean that you were limited to
the African American
community? Okay.
Yeah, that was those who are viewing or familiar with Kansas City. That was from about 12th Street to 25th Street, and from about Truce to Prospect. That was the area, and the majority of us lived in that period in that area.
Any expectations put on you as a police officer in that area that you were patrolling?
Oh, I loved it because I knew everybody. I mean, if you were black and you went to public schools, you either went to RT Coles or Lincoln because you couldn't go to the eight white high schools.
Okay.
And although there were elementary schools around, from Penn School Elementary out near St. Luke's Hospital, Dunbar, where I went to school out near the Veterans Hospital. There's a school over near the old Sears and Roebuck on Cleveland, but the school was actually on Spruce, about 14. So we were in that period so it was a period that the one thing about it, if a crime was committed, it didn't take you long to find out who had done it.
Okay.
Because you had that kind of relationship
with
if you were
people.
the right kind of cop. If you were a people's cop, rather than a cop, but a people's cop, then people would tell you information. But it was an experience that I told you before we went.
We're going to come back to that when
We'll
we get back from break.
Don't let me get ahead. You go
I'm
ahead.
Not,
this is your show. This is
I
my
know,
show.
but I'm loving this conversation.
All
but
right.
we are going to get back. I want to know about a specific incident about
when I was in the academy,
the police academy. Right.
Police academy at that
so
time
we're
was
come
at
back.
police headquarters. So you want to deal with that?
We're going to have to come back to that.
Oh, okay.
We have to take a break,
right.
So we'll be right back with Mr. Alvin Brooks in just a moment.
There's a saying, do what you love what you do. At Kansas City, Kansas Community College Technical Education Center, you can choose from 20 technical programs, affordable programs designed to prepare you for high-demand jobs. You can be prepared for the job you love in 1 year or less. Visit us online at kckcc.edu or call today about the wide variety of technical education programs offered at the Technical Education Center at 2220 North 59th Street, phone 627-4100.
Hi, and welcome back to Conversations, and I am here with Mr. Alvin Brooks of Kansas City, Missouri. We ended up with the conversation of you on the police force, and prior to the public accommodations and the civil rights and everything, you have a story about while you were on the force and where you could and could not eat.
Well, the police academy was in police headquarters at 12th and Locust. And of course, I was the only African American in the class of 29. And my 28 white colleagues at lunchtime would go downtown and fan out and eat anywhere they wanted to eat. The only place that I could eat downtown at that time was at Kresge's. And Kresge's, which was actually on the alley where we could eat, standing up, and the only thing you could get was a hot dog and a Coke. And of course, when I was a kid, you know, that was fascinating to have that hot dog and that Coke, not knowing it was segregated, not knowing it was I was being discriminated against and all that. So I called it the segregated hot dog and segregated Coke. But when I grew older, I knew better, that it was demeaning to me, and I was not going to allow myself to play into that. So when I came on the police department in the recruit class, 1st of June of 1954, I bring my lunch. My white colleagues, as I say again, would just fan out and eat wherever they wanted to, come back about 1 o'clock and resume class. One day, we were after lunch, and sometimes a Sergeant Jim Kennedy, felt kind of sorry for me, I guess, and would bring his lunch and eat with me.
Okay.
And this particular day, we were eating there in the classroom, no one but he and myself. And after that, class resumed, shortly after 1 o'clock, the door was closed to the classroom, and he was just sitting by the door because someone else was lecturing. And the door opened, and one of the detectives, who was white, came in and whispered something to him, and they stepped outside. And pretty soon, Sergeant Kennedy came back in and started beckoning for me to come there, which I did. And he introduced me to this detective. He said, "This is Detective so-and-so." And he said, "They just had a strong-arm robbery down at 12th and Main over the noon hour. And the description of the suspect was a black male and about your complexion and height. And we've got 3 other black males who are being held in the jail. We're going to use them in the lineup. And would you mind being the 4th one?" I said, "Sure." It was kind of exciting to me. 22 years old. Hey, I'm going to be in lineup and that kind of thing. So I go up and they put me in the holding tank with the other 3 persons. They didn't know because we didn't have any gun or anything, and I was just in civilian clothes. And so they brought us out on the stage, and you asked you your name, you step out, and you turn to the left, to the right, back up, and this kind of thing. The lady identified me.
Okay.
And the lady happened to have been Caucasian. And so after they took the other 3 back, they brought me back into the show-up room. And of course she screamed because here I was, and I'm the one, and she just screamed and backed in the corner, and they said, no, wait a minute. This is one of the police cadet, a recruit. It wasn't him. He was on lunch with the sergeant. And I often thought, and I've said this over and over again, if I had gone downtown that day, white woman, black, young male, there's a good chance that I never would have made it on the police department. Would probably have done some time because it was my word against hers. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any witnesses to say, but that day, among a number of other days, I didn't go downtown.
Right.
And if I did go downtown, I went just to walk, not to eat. And so the sergeant was there. He could attest to the fact that I was in the classroom with him eating lunch. And the lady apologized and everything. But I just often
Does that make
thought,
you think about how many
possible
innocent
oh God, yes.
young
yes,
men?
yes. And you can cite them that made national news around the country.
Right.
But there are those that never made the news. And when you think of Emmett Till, you think of the situation over in Marysville that the African American back, I think it was in the 40s, was lynched and hung on top of the church. And
Right.
I think of the Scottsboro boys
Right.
who were traveling by, and all of them did time later on. So this happens over and again. It could have happened right here in Kansas City to me.
Right.
So just the grace of God that it turned out that way.
That's great. Now, while you're on the force, you were also able to mentor young youth, help with gangs and things like that.
I was a uniformed police officer for about 5 years, half of my 10-year tenure on the police department. And I made detective, or made corporal first. At that time they had corporals. Made corporal, and I was assigned to the juvenile unit. Prior to that, though, let me give you just a quick background. I was one of 6 uniformed black officers that they used a test to move us from where because at that time we could only patrol, as I had mentioned before, the African American community.
Right.
So they called in 6 of us to use us as guinea pigs. That's my term.
Okay.
And test how we could fare in an all-white community. But it's interesting, the white community that they put us in was low-income white community out in the northeast part of Kansas City, Missouri. And we worked out of another station at that time. It was called the Sheffield Station at Independence Avenue in Bennington. And so we worked around the shift. Well, I was in college at the time. I had already finished 2 years in junior college at Lincoln Junior College. And after I made probation in 1 year, I then went back to school. At that time, it was Kansas City University. Now it's University of Missouri, Kansas City. And so we were interviewed by the chief. It was Bernard C. Brandon, who was the chief at the time, and said they wanted to try this out. And so I was out there, and as I say, I never shall forget. Two things happened that are part of my life. Number one, I got a call one time, investigate a possible suicide on the flagpole at Northeast High School. That's on Van Brunt.
Okay.
And so I made the call. It was just about dusk dark, and I took the spotlight on the police car and shining. It was somebody hanging from this pole up there. So I called the fire department. Mm-hmm. They came and let it down. It was me in effigy. What they'd done, they'd found a mannequin and a same color uniform that police we had on, and it had written across, and it had ketchup all on it, looked like blood, and it had written across the front to me, "Nigger go home, Alvin Brooks." And so it was fun to all my white colleagues who were working out at that station. Right. It was a lot of fun there, because it wasn't me. It wasn't fun. And I ended up finding out who the four boys were over time, because I had a relationship with the community, although it was ethnic at the time, right. Because we had most Italian Americans, people from most of the European countries, okay. And I had good relationships, and so I found out who the four boys was, and took them to their respective homes, and the parents said, "What do you want to do?" I community service, and I had them mowing people's lawns and all that summer. Other thing happened was the district that I rode was northeast, over by the old Montgomery wards and in that area, and there was a place on North Montgall called Johnny's Place. And of course I was in school, so I preferred to work evenings and midnight, 8 to 4, 12 to 8 shifts, and allowed me to go to school in the daytime. Went into Johnny's Place during those hours and was served. They had the hottest chili and good chili and all like that, and people loved to have me around at night. Well, Johnny, the owner, only worked in days. During the summer, I worked days. Okay. And this particular time I had a recruit named Leroy Swift, who just came back from Korea.
Let's take a break. Okay. And we're going to come back with Leroy Swift.
Okay, come back with Leroy Swift.
We're going to come back with him in just a moment.
Okay.
And we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with Mr. Alvin Brooks in just a moment.
Alzheimer's disease, if left, including baby and grandchildren. As a scientist studying American Health Assistance Foundation, continue to research as our own. Call 3724ahaf.org. Learn what is deadly disease.
Thousands of people are diagnosed with a disabling eye vision loss.
So today. This is not on the road to financial independence, who stay the course. Learn more about securing your choose to save off in the long run.
Savings man hit two young spenders named. Let them buy whatever they choose and design.
Welcome back to Conversations, and we're here, and we're with Mr. Alvin Brooks of Kansas City, Missouri, and we finished up with a story, and I want you to continue that.
Very quickly with the Leroy Swift story. He was a recruit at the time, assigned to me as a training officer over the Northeast area. This restaurant we went in, and it was the daytime when the owner was there. He refused to serve us. Leroy just got back from Korea, and as a lieutenant, and he picked up this counter, and I was saying, look, don't do this. We'll
Right.
get both of us fired.
Right.
My point is showing how far we've come.
We have.
That was about 1950, about 1960, prior to public accommodations.
Okay.
And that's the kind of the police department was, a big fun thing for my colleagues up at the station. But we've come a long way.
We have.
Come a long way.
You have another passion, I want to say, and that is the ad hoc group against crime.
Yes.
You actually founded it,
Yes.
and then was the president in
Yes.
1991. 1991.
1919. God, time goes by fast when
It
you're having
does.
fun.
What was the impetus?
1991,
Okay,
yes.
what was the impetus for starting?
Well,
the ad
I
hoc
started the
against
group in
crime?
1977,
Okay.
after the death of 10 women in Kansas City over a short period of time, and they were street women and on drugs, and so someone was killing them. At the same time, there was someone on the East Coast, New Jersey, New York, they called him the Son of Sam. He was killing prostitutes. The black community in Kansas City felt that this was a serial killer, but the police were refusing to deal with it as that. I was off the police department at that time, but my friend Al Lomax was the sergeant and headed the squad that was investigating these 10 homicides. And he and I sat down and went over those 10 homicides, and there was no connection to show there was a serial killer. So I convened a meeting the 30th of November 1977, and I invited just about 60 to 70 people. One of my friends ended up giving the news, making a news release and giving it to the media, not intentionally,
Okay.
not a news release, but my memo to some folks. And since I was in City Hall as assistant city manager, it became public, and I had several hundred people at that meeting. Very stormy meeting, confronted meeting. We never got into dealing with those 10 cases.
Okay.
Everybody was kind of floor showing and you know, that kind of thing. But as a result of that, I continued those meetings, and that's how the ad hoc group against crime got started. And now we're back again in 2012, still ad hocing it.
Now, what type of things are you doing, or what type of things were you doing?
Well,
when
at
you
that
got
time we
started?
were dealing with consoling those persons who were victimized by homicide, those family members. At the same time, we had a reward fund in 1978. We put in a community hotline, and we raised $30,000 for a reward fund. 7 of those 10 homicides were cleared because of our reward fund, our hotline. We also put together a group called Black Men Together that's shown in the book here. We have vicious-looking persons. We would surround crack houses and have crack house marches. We wouldn't let anybody in or out of those crack houses. We close them down that way, run people out, run the
Just run
crack
them
dealers out. And also we had a hotline for young people to call in who were runaways or having some problems at home. And today we've moved to the point to where we're working with those families who've been victimized by homicides. We're working with some 200 families now. You know, each year Kansas City over the last several years had over 100 homicides. And you can always depend upon, look forward to, and I hate to put it that way, but 70% of the homicides in Kansas City will end up being African American males, being killed by African American males, black on black crime. And so we're working with those families who've been victimized by homicide, and if there are children, siblings to the victim or children of the victim, and from African American males from 9 up to 24, we're trying to work with them to keep them from getting involved in retaliation, because in most cases the victim knows the perpetrator and the family member knows the perpetrator, and therefore it's I don't want to give a statement, I don't want to, I'll take this on myself. So we're doing those kinds. We still have a hotline, still have a youth helpline. And we work very close with the police, the courts, the community, and the whole criminal justice system.
You've been doing this for so long.
Too long.
What keeps you going? Because you have actually talked with the parents of the victims. You've consoled
And
them
perpetrators at times.
and gone to funerals. You have visited
prayer vigils.
You have visited those in prison. What keeps you going?
Well, it's been sort of a ministry.
Okay.
It's been a passion, and I think that in life sometimes we go through life and never find our niche. And I think I found my niche 40 some years ago, from 1954 up until the present time. And I was asked one time when we lost our son 9 years ago, and one of the reporters, one of the stations said, "What keeps you going? What you lost a son and this kind of thing." And I think, you know, I think the Creator wants us to be our brother and our sister's keeper. And I think that this has been my mission, my what I've dealt with all my life, all my adult life, and even in my teenage life, from 16 to 17, working in the Jewish community with a good friend, Fred Sachs, who was Jewish, and learned a lot about multiculturalism, religions, different religions, that kind of thing. And I think that it's been a passion. And so I see it as, from my faith, being a Christian, that and it talks about, you know, bearing the cross. If you want to be one of my disciples, to pick up the cross and follow me.
Right.
And I think that helping other people has lifted the burden, my own burden. And so I miss my son tremendously. Every time I drive by Research Hospital at Mara and Prospect, I think about it. Every time I visit someone there, I think about it. But at the same time, doing that for folks in their grief, in their lowest moment in their lives, and helping them helps me to get through this. And
that's what keeps you from.
At the end of the day, I say thank God for another day, and I hope that I've done something to please you. And that's the way I've lived. And when the last act is performed and the curtain comes down, I hope that I'll be seen in that light, not what people have done for me, but what I've done to others.
Right. Just within the last 2 weeks, we've heard on the news about murders in
Yes.
Kansas City, Missouri, families that you've visited.
And Kansas City, Kansas.
And Kansas City, Kansas,
yes.
correct. I guess one of the questions I want to know is, I know you're invited to the services. Are you asked to speak at those services?
Sometimes, too often,
Too
by
often.
either the film director, the minister, or the family. And I say that in all due respect, because I'm tired of looking into the faces of African American homicide victims, because homicides are preventable.
Correct.
It takes a perpetrator and a victim, and in most cases, I said before, the perpetrator and the victim know each other. And I'm tired of looking in the faces, particularly of young African American males who, God did not intend for us to live this way and die this way, and God don't call nobody home who's a victim of a murder. I mean,
Right.
that's false. That's not scripture. And so
I know it's painful, but does it create a little bitterness in?
No, it's anger, because
anger.
that suspect is still out there on the streets, because too often those homicides go unsolved because of that whole bit, I don't want to snitch. And even family members sometimes, it really aggravates you.
Right.
Family members sometimes won't tell the police because they feel that they don't want to be considered a snitch. And when you get a mother who goes on television, rather than to talk about the sorrow, the grief that she's going through with her son, she gets on television and says, I want everybody to know my son wasn't a snitch. Well, there's something wrong with
Right.
that. Something wrong with that.
Right.
But so funerals, and we hold vigils, more vigils and funerals. And in 2010, I spoke at 41 funerals. Last year, 29. 2011, I think I've spoken at about 7 this year, and there have been 20 homicides, I think. So, you know, it gets to you after a while. Yeah, I can't say no, but I don't invite myself.
Right.
Can I speak it? No, I don't do that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being here with us today. We applaud you, and you are a true blessing to our community, and
Thank you. Thank
we
you.
really hold you up to the highest.
Now, this
So
really is your
thank
show
you.
now. It's not my show. You let me do
This
all the
is
talking
really
to
my
you. It's your show.
But
All right.
we've had Mr. Alvin Brooks on, and today it was about you. So thank you.
You're
Thank
quite
you for
welcome.
being here with us.
Thank you for allowing me to be on your show.
All right. And you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today, and please join us next time on Conversations. That was great.